Hello, welcome to this episode of the Partovi Effect. I am Mrs. Madi Partovi.
And I'm Dr. Ryan Partovi.
And the first thing I want to say is that this is going to be a sweet and short episode. And
Famous last words.
okay. Well, this is what I'm about to say is a Partovi public service announcement. And we are continuing to receive the spike protein test results. What's the official way of saying it?
The anti-spike protein antibody titer test results.
Yes. And many of the results continue to come in very high. But there are a handful of people that are yielding, the tests are yielding very low results. And this is equally concerning. And beloved, will you please explain why?
Yeah, so really we've only seen a couple of these. And what I would say is that these are people who, on one hand, they test positive to the nucleocapsid antibody, which means that they've had COVID for sure. These are people who are unvaccinated and they've mounted no antibody response to the spike protein. So typically we would see, because there's two types of antibodies we're looking at, right? We're looking at the anti-nucleocapsid antibodies, which is like the outer protein coat of the virus, and then the spike protein antibodies, which can be an indication of either vaccination or a strong, if the titers get really high, then they are often an indication that there's some kind of long COVID or vaccine injury going on, either because of persistent spike, which can happen due to the vaccines or boosters. We now know that they can continue because it's not natural mRNA, synthetic mRNA made with a lot of pseudouridine. You end up with persistent spike protein production. It can also be related to just a lot of excess exposure to spike in someone who's sensitive. And actually, it turns out semen is the number one way that people get exposed to spike, and it really seems to drive up antibody levels. But there's a lot of other ways. Even just being in a car ride with someone who just got boosted or who has COVID or recently had COVID can be a way to drum up that immune response. And the third way is anti-spike protein autoimmunity. So COVID-induced autoimmunity is something else we've seen. There's 23 different peptides that are common in between the human body and the COVID virus. And so we think that's a big part of it as well, at least for some people, I would say. When you have an anti-nucleocapsid antibody response that's positive, and then you have a spike protein response, which is negative, which is what you're talking about, where literally there's no response to the spike protein. Typically, what that's going to indicate is that the immune system has a blind spot when it comes to the spike protein, and in particular, well, I would say to the COVID virus and the spike protein in particular. And that's problematic because what it really, it means that that's someone who is going to get infected by the COVID virus, but not necessarily be able to what we call seroconvert, or to be able to fully mount an immune response to the virus, specifically the spike protein. So let's say, for example, this is somebody who's been vaccinated. The vaccine would have literally no effect on them other than turn their body into a spike protein factory. But it's a spike protein factory that their immune system cannot deal with that spike protein. And so it's just going to really contribute to chronic disease in their case.
Well, and I'm going to assert that people with long COVID, but with no symptoms, have been.
Well, you have to define what you mean by long COVID with no symptoms, because
Well,
that's not going to compute to most people.
these results.
Well, that's not what we're talking about. So let
Okay,
me finish what I'm saying, and then maybe you can follow
sure.
up with a question. So if somebody has been vaccinated against COVID or has had COVID before, but then they have these really low anti-spike protein antibody titers, typically it's either a blind spot in their immune system where due to their genetic differences in their immunity, which are determined for those out there who've taken immunology, the HLA haplotypes. And we're not exactly sure which HLA haplotypes provide this sort of blind spot against the spike protein, but it's presumed that's what's going on here. It could also be just someone whose immune system is very weak. And that would be especially true for people who are struggling to get through their days. Especially, we find that often these are people who are going to have some of the most severe symptoms, whether that be in the mental emotional side, where they're having a lot of emotional reactions and difficulty regulating and that kind of thing, or neurological symptoms. Sometimes it can be things like paresthesias or spasms, to the other side, which is often asymptomatic in the beginning anyway, which is the turbo cancers, right? So oftentimes people who will not have that anti-spike protein antibody response because they have really end up unable to clear spike protein to some degree, especially when even if they're not vaccinated, even if their body's able to clear the COVID virus using other antibodies, they're still getting spike protein exposure from exposure to people who are vaccinated through shedding. So they're not going to be able to clear the spike protein that they get through shedding at the very minimum, right? And so because of that, it's going to contribute to things like cancer risk and so forth. So
Earlier I was alluding to the dropping dead phenomenon.
I mean, I would say that we know that the dropping dead phenomenon is a result of cardiotoxicity. And we know that cardiotoxicity of COVID comes from the spike protein. So it's reasonable to assume that if you have someone who's not able to mount a successful immune response to the spike protein, then that might indicate, it might, then we could infer that they would, as a result of that spike protein exposure that they're not able to mount an immune response to, that they may end up with, as a result of that, increased cardiovascular disease risk. I mean, that seems logical to me. I find that plausible.
Okay, so it's worth it to get the test done.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, in my view, I'm running this test on every new patient. I'm running this test on all current patients at least once a year just to see what their levels are looking like. You know, we've had patients all across the board, vaccinated, unvaccinated, who've had COVID once, who've had COVID 4 or 5 times. And there's quite a bit of individual variation in the immune response. But I think this particular case you're talking about, that we've had a couple of them, it's quite interesting. And certainly there's a genetic component to it. And it remains to be seen, because I think that the couple people that we're talking about, have either of them actually become patients, or were they just, I think they just got the screening.
Yeah, they just got
Yeah, they just got the screening. So yeah, so it's hard to say because we've not been able to do any other lab work on them. And so it's hard to say what else may be going on, but it'd be fascinating to find out.
Yeah. And now we're going to move on to something completely different and lighter. I would like to acknowledge all the people that have been commenting on our podcast. The first ever comment that we received on our podcast is from Scott Persky 8807. Wow, this is amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you do, Ryan and Maddie. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Yes. And High Vibe 77. Y'all are so caring and amazing to each other and your patient care. With a heart. Thank you so much. Independent difference. This is awesome. Thank you for taking the time to share this information with us. We appreciate you so much for watching and for leaving these comments. And I am fully received. Russell Bruce, great that you guys are doing this. A gift to all of us. Thank you, Russell. And Peter S, GGM or GG1MG.
If you'd like me to read some of
yes,
these,
please.
I can.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Peter says, thank you, Doctor and Maddie. We found you early via the FLCCC and did the video consultation with you in order to get an ivermectin prescription in 2021 to 2022. Was exposed to a recently boosted family member in summer 2022 and then tested positive, but was already with the FLCCC protocol, including the beta iodine nasal spray. Felt like crap for 12 hours, but quickly recovered thanks to all of you, much to the dismay of family members who still thought I was crazy to self-medicate. What a time in human behavior and political history. Too bad not many have learned the lessons. I like that comment. Yeah.
And on to Dawn Teller, 8183. Emotional to me as well.
Well, I just wanted to clarify when he says beta iodine, it's betadine is what he's talking about. But yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
And then this was a comment under one of our cancer episodes. And I know this, she's a mom. Emotional to me as well. My daughter has spoken with you, so have I, diagnosed stage 4, 25 years old. God bless you both for seeing the truth, for trying to help people. They say my girl will never be off of chemo. I do not believe this. I hope she will change her mind when it comes to the medicine. God bless you both.
Oh, I think I know who this is.
Yeah.
Or at least I know who the daughter is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I hope so too.
Yeah.
I can read the next one. Marjorie Cranston says, I totally trust this group. Please listen and also subscribe. That's like the first time we've ever said that, actually. So thank you, Marjorie, for saying that for us. They are readily available and you may do a video consultation. Very efficient staff. I'm sure they're happy to hear that. I cannot say enough about them. So glad to have found them. Do not neglect this information.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Yeah.
And Carolyn McEvitt, thank you so much for sharing your information once again. You both are so very helpful, and I very much appreciate all that you do for our health. Thank you, Carolyn.
The Grom says, thank you. The past few years having you in my corner has been great. You've been very helpful guiding me in the right direction.
Beautiful. And Janet Koziel, 7054. Dr. Partovi has helped my husband improve his health and has provided us with tons of useful information. Dr. Partovi is knowledgeable and trustworthy. I recommend him and his staff, who are all very professional and genuinely care about helping improve their patients' health. I appreciate that so much, Janet.
Yeah, thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Yes. And then Essentially Fit says, thank you for this amazing info. It is our pleasure. And yes. Robin Siebold, great service and informative. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you very much. Sean Kreese says, in a world often clouded by misinformation and partial truths, particularly in the medical field where Big Pharma's interests can come into play, working with Dr. and Mrs. Partovi is a breath of fresh air. We pay this man nothing, by the way, I just want to say. Before I joined Aspen Wellness, they took the time to meet with me to answer any questions I had. This level of customer service, even before I was a customer, is very rare these days. If you have eyes and ears to question the status quo, I highly recommend starting here.
I do have to shout out to Anna Lake, our office manager, who is truly phenomenal.
Well, and I should say Anna will talk to everybody for sure. And then if there's somebody who's like still has questions that she doesn't know the answer to, then she'll get them in contact with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a way I stay really connected to our community's needs and also all of their thoughts and emotions and feelings as well.
Yeah.
So it's an honor for me to be the space for that for people. So thank you so much, Sean. I know that my husband has told me that you're one of his favorite that shows up on the calls. And he really enjoys.
I try not to play favorites, but you're calling me out here.
He enjoys your presence, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead, you can.
So Gatiragram, which is Margarita HG spelled backwards. Dearest Ryan and Maddie, it is so wonderful to have found your YouTube channel. You have been in my mind and heart all these years, and I'm thrilled to be able to see and listen to you both again. You are a power couple and a blessing to the world. Thank you so much for being who you are and your positive impact. I love you and miss you. We love you and miss you too, Auntie Margarita.
Yes.
So this is my very dear friend, Margarita, who went to med school with me. She's also a physician, and she has moved to France. So we haven't seen her in a few years, but we think about her often, and I look forward to visiting her one of these days.
And YouTube is doing something right because the algorithm presented her with our channel.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I love it.
All right. ASCM, my smart pasta. It's great to have warriors with courage to save lives, with the information that's always current and they're always available to help. Thank you for all you do.
Did you want to talk about any of the Do you want to talk about any of the other sort of common misconceptions that you hear about online? This might be a good time to do that.
What do you mean?
Oh, just about
Because
ivermectin or anything else.
I actually, hold on, I wanted to take a moment to allow myself to be moved.
Sure.
You know me.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah, so I'm really just taking a moment to really receive all of those beautiful and extraordinary comments by amazing people, our amazing community. As the practice manager who I speak to people almost daily, people who are suffering, people who have loved ones suffering.
Right.
Just the other day, a young 30-year-old male who got the COVID vaccine once and then had COVID at once and has not been the same since November of last year.
Mhm.
Just a slew of symptoms. So it is the word is edifying, correct? Just to see these comments roll in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So thank you. We fully and wholeheartedly receive them graciously. All right. Oh, okay. So the answer to your question in the last few moments is I actually just want to say the word ivermectin so many times that to mess with the YouTube
Mm.
algorithm to see this video just we actually it starts to load. I think Molly loads it and then checks it to see if it'll be flagged, right?
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
yeah, ivermectin works.
We could say it in different accents. We could say, like, in Spanish, ivermectin. We could do the Filipino ways, ivermectin. We could do French, ivermectin.
How about
I don't know if that's
how about
correct, actually, but I'm trying.
how about
Ivermectin.
fine?
That was yours? Oh, I
Ivermectin.
stole it from you. Well,
Ivermectin.
you have to distinguish if you're going to go drawl or twang, because
That's
there's
right,
two southern accents, right?
yeah.
But anyway, ivermectin is more of a drawl.
Ah.
Ivermectin is more of a twang, right? So you kind of I was mildly famous in college for my ability to do the drawl because I went to school in the South. So
Well, we also both have a history of being thespians.
that's
So,
also true.
yes. I want to say it the way my mom says it, the Vietnamese way.
Oh, go ahead.
Ivermectin.
Yeah, there you go. We love you, Mom.
We love you, Mama. Okay. All right. This has been the short and sweet episode of the Partovi
It
Effect.
actually was pretty short and sweet. I'll give you
Yes.
that.
We have something so extraordinary for you next week. And it comes from, oh gosh, something that we live every single day in and day out. And it has to do with food, like your relationship with food and ways to empower your relationship with food. Your DNA, your diet, the future of personalized nutrition now,
Hmm.
and how that would absolutely alter your life. in so many ways. Your mental, your physical, your spiritual health. I'm just so excited. So please make sure to tune in next week.
And all of those are all interconnected, by the way. It's one of the challenges I think we deal with as a society, and we could probably do a whole episode on this. But
Yes.
people operate like, oh, spirituality is totally unrelated to my body. Like that's just a separate realm. And I don't think that's correct. And I also think that people operate as like there's a lead plate right here where it's like, okay, well, whatever's going on in my brain, that's not affected by my body and vice versa. And that's, or maybe my body could get affected by my brain, but that's about it, right? It's like, it's not a two-way street, and it's
Mm.
obviously a two-way street. So, um, yeah,
All right.
stay tuned.
Yes. Be well.
Yeah.
My name is Mrs. Madi Partovi.
And I'm Dr. Ryan Partovi, and this has been the Partovi Effect, creating the consensus. Thanks for joining us.